they were talking about, and this is something I never really paid much attention to and never put the two together because of the hog situation that's in China right now, but they were talking about how China was just flat not going to buy anywhere between 10 to 12% of the soybeans that they buy anyway, just because of the situation with the hogs. So talk about that a little bit and where you see that headed.
It's obviously a concern. I mean, you can't talk about being bullish U.S. hogs because of pork exports to China and not recognize that the Chinese feeder, is going to have less mouths to feed. Now, obviously, how long is it going to take them to find a vaccine that works? How long is it going to take them to stop the spread of the disease? How long, will it take for them to get back to where they can rebuild population? Are going to be all of the things that influence what actual long-term soybean demand looks like. So it's easy right now to say, okay, if they don't have the hogs, if the hog population is wiped out, then obviously they're not going to be feeding soybean meal. Very true, right? But how long will it take for us to see that population recovery, take place? So, and on top of that, if we do see a bullish hog setup domestically speaking, maybe we don't export our soybeans to China to feed, we keep them right here and crush more and use more meal. But it's been something that I've been kind of trying to point out for a while now, or I've at least been talking about. I mean, I'm not going to think I'm powerful enough to be like, listen to me, but it's been something that we've been talking about where we have seen imports to China or imports in China of soybeans, kind of gradually move quite a bit lower here. December and January both were down, I think, 5 to 7% each month. So that's huge. And a lot of people are saying, well, it's because of the trade war. Well, it's a rudimentary sort of solution, oh, well, the trade wars happened, so China's not importing soybeans. Maybe that has some legs to it, but the biggest concern I have is twofold when it comes to future imports, and Chinese imports, I guess you could say. The first being, have they realized that they don't need to feed the amount of meal that they've been feeding before? Because we have had that conversation where they allowed or reviewed the protein needs in their rations and have allowed them to lower the amount of soybeans and other protein sources that they've been using. So that's one. And then two, is the Chinese hog herd that much smaller to where they're not feeding? So those are two things that could have long-term implications and are important to pay attention to. But like I said, the easiest thing for the media right now and folks that don't necessarily understand all of the tiny pieces that kind of move when it comes to developing a supply and demand summary, those types of people are just easily saying, well, it's the trade war.
Right.
Because then it gets this false idea that if the trade war is solved, we see China go back to those old numbers. That's not necessarily the case, and it's something that we really have to be careful, to not hang our hat on, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Okay, so on that same front, yesterday there was an article out on Bloomberg talking about China buying $30 billion worth of ag-related products, corn, wheat, soybeans, there was all kinds of stuff. And just like every other article, it was, yeah, you are, but no, we're not. We didn't say anything like that. So what was the market's reaction to that, and what do you feel? How do you feel? We're almost to that March 1st deadline, and we're almost to that point where it's getting to be, hey, you know what? We're either we're going to or we're not going to.
Yeah.
What's your feel right now with what you see happening out there?
I think at this point in time, I'm trying to remain optimistic. Problem is that I've been remaining optimistic for what feels like ever. Yeah. I was we're going to have a 4th of July resolution sort of person. By 30 billion bushel from the U.S. Value of ag imports prior to the trade war was 20 billion. So they're saying in addition to that 20 billion. So we're looking at 50 billion bushel of potential ag exports. In true trader fashion, or at least market analyst fashion, I mean, if you want to really look at a glass half empty sort of thing, talk to a market analyst, because they will find ways to tell you why something's going to go wrong. They're saying there's no way we can export that much. Our infrastructure just won't allow it. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of agreement we come up with. A lot of folks are saying, hey, right now, that we could see a significant increase in pork, beef, poultry, ethanol, corn, and add that into what was being imported before, and those would all be new imports. So that would be bullish to a market structure as a whole. And I've been one that's kind of said all along that any sort of trade resolution would benefit corn more than it would benefit soybeans. Right. So, if that is the case, if we do see that happen, then yay, this whole entire thing's been worth it. So I guess we'll have to see, what happens. I'm trying to remain optimistic, and we definitely just need a resolution here sooner than later, but obviously we need to make sure that it's a resolution that is what we have been seeking out all along. Otherwise it's just been, like the government shutdown where we did it and then we're like, okay, why did we do it, and so it'll be something that we want to watch. Me, right now, I'm just like, okay, let's ink the 30 billion and then work on the other stuff, because I'd really like to have something, something work out in our favor here sooner than later, especially for corn and ethanol.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, so now we're having winter 3 months late, it feels like. So, I mean, we've got this weather pattern that's sinking in, long-term forecasts show out to, all the way through March and into April. Look at some very cold, very wet planting time frames. Yeah. Where do you think the market's got with building up a weather market selling or buying potential, and where do you see that starting to shape up?
Right now, I don't think there's any risk premium in corn. I think everyone has this idea that we're going to see. The USDA came out yesterday and said 92 million acres of corn, which is slightly below what everyone had been anticipating. There had been talk of up to 94 million acres here at the end of last year. Based on what I'm hearing out there from farmers and agronomists and things like that, we needed, basically to be into spring now or in the next couple weeks in order to really have that opportunity to get the fall field work done that didn't get done. Every day that goes by that we remain in permanent winter is another day that we're not moving in hydrous, we're not doing field work, we're not doing all of these things that are required to put corn in the ground. Now, obviously, we can still plant corn, and so that's the question. Do we see 92 million with a reduced yield number? Because I think the one thing that we've had in the reasonable springs here recently, at least in the springs where we've had a good amount of fall field work done and been prepared to put corn in the ground, we're able to pour the money on, we have time as our friend, all of these things to really kind of maximize that yield potential. And so now every day that goes by, if we do see the 92 million, do we see the 176 yield that the USDA is predicting? And so I don't think corn has the risk premium in place that it should. Now, some will argue that soybean risk premium is too high, that, we're $1 or $2 higher than where we should be. I have been in that camp for quite some time. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not trying to flip-flop, the old John Kerry thing. Remember when they held flip-flops up at his, a press conference or whatever. I'm not trying to do that. But the thing is that the more time we spend in this, $8.90 to $9.65, $10 range, the more it tells me that maybe that's where the market feels comfortable right now with what we have. The world's a very different place than what it was in 2006, So that everyone goes back to 2006 and says, well, this is the highest stocks-to-use ratio we've had since 2006. It's even higher than 2006. And in 2006, we were 480 futures. So we obviously have to lose $5. I don't know if that's the case. It's a different world. We have China, we have India, we have all of these countries that are growing, emerging, becoming, more of a modernized society. Does that change everything? But that doesn't mean that we have to go to 1050. I'm just not necessarily in the mindset now that we have to go to 7, Now, obviously, if we see 89 million acres planted again and have a 50 bushel to the acre yield and don't resolve this trade issue or ASF spreads that's the problem with making guesses right now is you have 100 different things that could happen to result in 100 different, endings, I guess you could say. We'll see what's going on, but I don't think the risk premium for corn is where it needs to be. I think for soybeans right now, it probably is.
Right. Also, you could have a zombie apocalypse between now and the end of the planting season, and who knows where that's going to go. Right?
There's some days where I would rather have that. Take me out.
Right on. All right, Angie. Well, if folks want to reach out to you and ask you questions or pick your brain about what's going on in the markets, how would they do that?
You can find me on Twitter at Goddess of Grain, or you can email me Setzer at citizenselevator.com.
All right. Well, Angie, take care of yourself. We'll talk to you again next week.